You're listening to Economics Detective Radio. My guest today is Matthew Curtis, the founder of Vice Lotteries. Matthew, welcome to Economics Detective Radio.
Hey, Gary, I'm really excited to be here. I've been a longtime fan, so this is really exciting for me.
Great. That's really good to hear. So, well, I'm going to assume that listeners have not heard of Vice Lotteries. So why don't you give the, the elevator pitch? What exactly is the idea?
So the idea is really pretty basic, that lotteries are just math and that we can use basic statistical probabilities to create lotteries that don't have the loss in them. Now, that's a counterintuitive notion, but the first thing you have to do, there's really two rules that get you there. The first rule is that you have to not take a rake or a house lot when people gamble. So that means if you think about it as the public bets $1 billion, and right now, after taxes and everything, they get about 50 cents on the dollar back. So that means, and this happens every 9 days, that they bet $1 billion in the United States. You bet $1 billion and you get a half a $1 billion back. If you reinvest that 5 times, you end up with $30 million. So what we do is we just give all the money back. We act like a bank, and every dollar that comes in, it gets dispersed in winnings. And that means that when the public invests $1 billion, they get $1 billion back. The second rule is that you have to account for, you have to make sure that individuals don't lose as well. So what we do is we're building algorithms to make sure that within a 5% statistical probability, that as long as people continue betting, their wins and losses will balance out, and their investment in lotteries will act like a savings account.
Okay. So this is kind of, I mean, it's interesting. Even the idea of innovating in the lottery space. I think most people just kind of think of lotteries as, there are some common complaints that they prey on people who are less financially literate, particularly people who can't afford to be losing money, and that there are many complaints that they're unethical, but there aren't a lot of ideas about how to supplant them or fix them or replace them. So that's what's interesting about this. I was just going to ask if you want to talk about some of the way lotteries currently work and what some of the complaints are that you want to address.
Yeah, so I think that all the complaints that you listed out are true. And most individuals who play, when I talk to people who are well educated like you or I am, everyone thinks about playing the lottery as, you're buying the Mega Millions when it's, you can win $1.5 billion or whatever your threshold is. Most people have a threshold. They will go out and buy a lottery ticket when it's economically useful for them to do that. And part of that, most people don't believe that they're going to win who play it that way. And you're just kind of buying the thrill of thinking about what it would be like to have $1 billion, which is exciting and entertaining. But most people who play the lottery, and there's no really good statistics about this because the states don't publish them. Most people who play the lottery play low-level games, and most people who play low-level games are poor, and they're really thinking of this as like an investment of how I get out of poverty. That winning $3,000 would get me out of poverty. But the fact is that they're losing money, and and there's really no stronger correlation over the last 50 years between the rise of the income inequality gap and the rise of state lottery profits. Right now, it's a $75 billion industry between the states and the federal government with the taxes. They're taking $45 to $50 billion from mostly poor people every year. Yeah, that's a massive problem. And I think that the reason why there's been no innovation in this space is because it's illegal, right? And so when we went through Y Combinator, which is a big startup, and they've been super helpful for us. But most people and most entrepreneurs, they don't run towards well-regulated industries. If we look at the history of innovation over the last 50 years, a lot of innovation happens on bites. And that's because it's an unregulated space that you can kind of create and build in. And like the reality is, though, is lottery industry is more profitable than the entire entertainment industry. And so there should be a lot of innovation, but it's just that it's a legal monopoly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's one of these things, we can think of the sort of celebrated examples of innovations that have come despite being, you know, illegal or, gray area legal when they started. So everyone talks about Uber, but there's also the innovation in shipping. I forget the name of the entrepreneur, but
Yep.
it was illegal because of for antitrust reasons to have your own container shipping company and trucking. But someone realized if you had the same containers on both, you could save a ton of money, and just started doing it illegally, and then was too big to stop by the time anyone caught on that this was illegal.
Yeah, I can't remember the
Mhm.
gentleman's name either, but it's that the box talks about that and does a really great job of covering
Mhm.
story.
Yeah, and so starting up a new startup, I looked at your page, and you have an FAQ, and one of the FAQ questions is this legal? And the answer is no, not right now.
Yeah,
So I think starting a new startup with a legal battle in order to exist is enough to turn away many an entrepreneur. But you have a background working with the Institute for Justice. So tell me about this as as a legal from a legal standpoint. How do you fight the lottery monopolies?
yeah. So I had a great opportunity when I was in law school, and I went to law school to win this case. So this it's just a huge opportunity, and it's really important. But I went and worked for them and learned from how they litigate cases and how they strategize for them. And the takeaway from that is you've got to have both a well-functioning press arm. They do a great job of working with legislatures. They do a great job of working with media, and you also have to frame the case in the right way, right? If you ever get an opportunity to read their briefs, they're really simple, and not simple in like a negative way, but simple in a very positive way, in that they explain what's at stake in their cases. I think that just for the listeners who aren't aware of them, their probably most famous case is Kilo, which was about whether eminent domain covered economic development, which they lost. I think it's a really good example of how they work. Is that they lost this case, and then most of the states changed their laws in the next year. I think their big fight right now that's in the public is about civil forfeiture, and sort of the same thing's happening right now, although they just won a case in the Supreme Court a couple months ago. But a lot of states, I think North Carolina today, made a law civil forfeiture is more difficult because they're running their cases with a press arm. And so that's what we're doing as well. We hope to win the case. We think our legal claims are really strong, because the claims essentially are that the state does not get to pick the winners and losers in the market, and that's simply not one of their sovereign powers. And especially that's true when they're picking themselves. So there's in the big when we draw a lot on. And stop me at any time if I'm going in too much of the weeds. But we draw a lot on the Sebelius case, which is struck down the Medicare. And what the court said there was that when the state legislature is getting so much money that it can't do anything else but enact the federal legislation, that's legislative compulsion, and that violates the sovereignty of the state. So we're drawing on that argument to say, you know what? New York, for example, made $5 billion last year. This represents a large percentage of their income, and they, as a legislature, they can't do anything but continue to make monopoly profits. So they can't actually regulate for the public benefit. So yeah, it's for me, it's been a 4 or 5 year commitment to understanding this and being able to do this in a way that we can be successful. But I think it'll be worth it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wish you the best, but when you think about challenging states, when what you're challenging them on is a major source of their revenue, there's no limit to how much they would invest in trying to defeat that challenge.
Oh yes, I have 6 attorneys against me in Michigan,
Hmm.
and like 2 or 3 in Indiana. But it doesn't really matter how much you invest if like the more that they claim, it's counterintuitive, right? So the more they claim that the money is important to them, the worse they are off legally. So in their
Mm.
briefs, they actually don't cite how much they need it, which is kind of shocking. So it's a really interesting line that they have to toe to try to to try to win the case as well.
Right. And so you've got sort of a two-pronged strategy then. First, you want to win the case. Second, you want to just draw enough attention to it that there that public outcry, just
Yeah.
draw attention to the sort of injustice of the current system, that even if you lose, as with Kilo v New London,
Yep.
is that right? Yeah.
I think so.
Even
I'm
if you
terrible at
lose,
citations, but I think you're right.
even if you lose, just the injustice of it, and the just the fact that it makes the law look bad, whereas most people probably just don't think about it right now.
Yeah.
Even if they did think about it, it would clearly be unjust. So let's go into the some of the specifics of how this works. So that how do you run a lottery that does not impoverish most of the people who play?
Yeah. So the first thing is that you have to use the internet, right? So I think that most people think about the lottery as a scratch off or like something you buy at a gas station. I grew up, my family owns gas stations. I grew up selling lottery tickets at gas stations. So like that's how I think about it too. But if you have the cost, the gas stations make 6%, the cost of the lottery tickets cost something. Once you have any loss within the system, finances, then there has to be a negative compound interest that's built up, that you play, you're losing 7 cents. If you reinvest that, you're just compounding that, right? So like state lotteries take about 40 cents on each dollar, and casinos take about 10 cents on each dollar. But because the frequency of play is higher at a casino, you end up losing about the same, just because that way it works. So the first thing is like it has to be on the internet, because the transaction cost can actually be low enough where it's the public, like as we talked about earlier, when the public bets $1 billion, we can just give them $1 billion back. So we have some cost in there, but we make our revenue or we will make our revenue lending out the money. So we are essentially a bank or a financial institution. Our incentives are aligned with getting people to put money on our account and stay on that. It's not necessarily to get them to play more games or to get them to bet more or anything like that. So our incentives from a consumer and a producer's perspective are in line, right? So we do better when they save more money, which seems like a good thing. And so, yeah, and then it's just, following the basic rule is we just don't take any money from the game. And if that happens, then if everyone puts in a whole pot of money and then those same people take it out, then at least the public's not going to lose. And then as we talked about, we'll have to tweak this and make it better as we go. But we're, looking at what's the correct number that people can bet, and we can ensure that they will continue to play so that they don't lose money. And for the one person who is just unlucky and you should never ride in a car with because they're going to be struck by lightning, we'll move some of the money from our ad revenue or from our other revenues to just give them the money so that they too, we can actually fill our promise of not having them lose money, because I'm sure that even probabilities, crazy things happen and people go on a wild losing streak. So we just want to make sure that is filled too. The other thing, the things that I really have to think about are, making sure that children are not using that. That's a big thing. And we're working with a great company called Burbix. So we scan IDs and then we use facial recognition to make sure that A, younger individuals are not using this, and then B, the people who are betting and the people who are taking out drawing money are actually them. So, we don't want someone else picking up your phone and going and gambling. This has to be an individual thing. And the second thing is that, like, although we're taking the loss out of lottery, gambling can be an addiction, and addictive, repetitive behavior, even if you're not losing money, is not helpful. So we're working with a company called Boundless.ai, and they're doing some great things they came from Twitter. And what Twitter did back in the day, is they used algorithms to determine, how can we get you to stay on your phone more? So these guys left Twitter and they decided, hey, we think people shouldn't become addicted to their phones. So they built algorithms to detect when really repetitive behavior is coming about. And so we're actually building our apps to like slow down the phone and just make it annoying enough that someone will leave that that loop of gambling and go do something else with their life. So, I think we have a great opportunity to really build what lottery should look like, Obviously, we won't do it perfect the first time, and there'll be a lot of improvements that go around. But those are kind of the big things that we have to think about.
I think you mentioned this, but the if the idea is the house doesn't win, but you do you do earn, enough to keep the lights on. So
Oh,
so
oh,
how
sure.
exactly does that happen?
Yeah. So our financial model looks like a bank, but better than a bank. So a bank takes in money. When you put your money into your checking account, that bank is lending that money out to another bank, and it's on your books, but it's not actually there. So they're getting, probably now they're getting 2 to 3% every day, and we'll just do the same thing. So this is a $75 billion industry. There's going to be one or two winners in this market. So if you like, when we talk to investors, you say in order to make $1 billion in revenue a year, we need to have between all of our different revenue streams somewhere between 15 and $20 billion on our books, right? So um, that's sort of like how you make revenue. And we're building not just for us to build games. We're building so that other game developers can build games. As we should have lots of really fun, interesting games that people play, and we'll divert the ad revenue towards them. So that way they can be profitable. We can make sure that all the payment infrastructure is secure, and what's really important is that it's reliable and there's no cheating. So that's our goal, and it is like this isn't like a short term thing. When you're getting investors and when you're thinking about how you build a company this way, you really have to build for being big and being great. And either we'll be able to make that or we won't. But I'm pretty sure that some company will figure out how to do this and do it really well. Hopefully, I don't screw it up.
Okay, so when you talk about games, so I was gonna say, the lottery tickets kind of they and I mean casinos to a greater extent, they make it
Yeah.
fun. They kind of put it in the context of, you're scratching off a tic-tac-toe
Yep.
puzzle or something. They kind of gamify it to make it to sort of make it more attractive. And so when you say that you're building a platform for people to make games, like are you saying
Yep.
someone could sort of have like a Candy Crush style game where they spend a little money and then win a little money and net zero in the end. So your lottery concept, but with a with some kind of fun wrapper around it.
Yeah, exactly. So we will have the basic payment and odds infrastructure, and then we want other game developers to, develop lots of different games, right? So you could have a Pokemon Go version of this, right? Where there would be augmented
Mm.
reality out in the world, and you would have to go to some place to enable to unlock your ability to make a bet, right? You could put this in Fortnite, where if they wanted to have some lockbox hidden somewhere in the game, they could do that, and we'll build out an API for that so that all our customers can move across games and across platforms to be able to continue to play where they want to play, and so that's really how we see it developing, and that'll allow game developers to I don't know if you're familiar with Stripe or like even PayPal's infrastructure. What they really do
Hmm.
well is that they allow e-commerce companies, to quickly. They don't have to build out a payment infrastructure. They can just use their API to build their software or build their online shopping experience. And from a development perspective, that's so much easier. And we want to do the same thing, but for lotteries, is that we build out the payment infrastructure that then I can't imagine what games will come about this. This is, like I said, it's a $75 billion industry. There's no question that this will have effect on the gambling industry. And so that's a $250 billion industry. And so, there's a whole lot of game developers who will be able to create great games. And we just want to provide them the infrastructure to do that.
Yeah. Speaking of existing industries that sort of prey on people's uh, bad decisions or addictive behavior, Freemium Games is another one where they kind of
Yeah.
they make all their money off a small number of highly addicted people, and sort of bleed them dry. So it seems like you're sort of innovating in that space as well, and hopefully in a positive way that doesn't harm the players.
Yeah, and we'll have a lot of hard like, we'll have a lot of hard decisions, if we're successful about how to integrate with those kind of games. Because I think you're right that a lot of the structures of payments are predatory, and the struggle to build a company that's in line with our consumers, but having developers who are used to building games that aren't so much, will be a tough task that we'll have to balance. And I'm sure we won't always get right, but we'll certainly try to.
And the one thing that people can't do when incorporating this in a game, though, would be to turn it into a game of skill, because of course then someone who is very very skilled would have a lot of winning. Someone who's not skilled would have very little. So you still need the element of random chance.
Correct. Yeah, it has to be pure chance. And a lot of people have asked us, will you go into sports betting and all of this? And I don't think that's, I don't know how to solve that problem from a distributional standpoint. So I don't think that that's something that we'll end up doing.
Yeah. So okay. So where are you in this whole process? Like, how old is Vice Lotteries at the present moment, which is April 2nd, 2019, is when we're recording this.
Yeah, so we just started litigation. Well, we started the company in January. Y Combinator, for those of you who don't know, is like a 10-week sprint, where you sort of focus on a couple key goals, and then you want to be marketable to seed and angel investors so that you can get to your next pipeline. If anyone is looking to start a startup, I really recommend them. They were willing to take on an illegal activity, and saw value in that. And I think that the way that they think about investment is really good. So we started in January. Litigation started in Indiana and Michigan in February, and we've got a couple more states that we're going to start litigating with, hopefully by the end of this week, and or not, if not early next week.
Okay. Wow. So yeah, so next week might be you know right as this is being released. So yeah. So do you want to?
Perfect. Yeah. So our next state's is Texas. They have some really great state constitutional law, so that'll be a really interesting case to watch. And then New York and California, just because they're the biggest.
And how many of these cases do you need to win to be viable? Like, do you if you won exactly in exactly one state, could you then effectively operate in other states as well, if as long as you're centrally located in the state where it becomes legal?
So no, you even after this becomes legal in all the states, payments have to be processed intrastate. So federal law still applies,
Hmm.
and the federal law says that if it is legal in the state, then it is legal on the federal level. And so we've got the attorney general to already agree to that, which was a really big win for us. And so, like, let's say that Indiana becomes legal, then that means we can operate in Indiana the next day. So if the district judge says, you won your case, then it's legal. There's no question that the Indiana will appeal that, and they'll go to the appeals court. If we win at the appeals level, then it'll basically become legal throughout the Seventh Circuit, because Indiana is in the Seventh Circuit. We'll have to file in the other circuits, but the reason will apply, and therefore we should win what's called a temporary restraining order based upon that reasoning that's already been decided on by the Seventh Circuit. So that would mean that then we could operate in Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, a couple other states. And so each circuit would go like that. And if we won in the Supreme Court, then we could operate in every state. I guess it depends on our reasoning. There is some reasonings that we have that we could operate in the larger states, but not the smaller states. But I really doubt that the Supreme Court would decide on that basis. And so the only states that we wouldn't be able to operate in are the states that it's currently illegal. So Utah, Hawaii, and Alaska, we would not be able to operate in without legislative change. which is important. Like if if the people want to have it be illegal that people gamble, even our type of gambling, they're able to. The only thing that they can't do is they just can't decide to run a monopoly. That's basically our legal take.
Yeah. The idea like, oh, gambling is exploitive, so it should be illegal, except for this one monopoly that we run is not really
Yeah,
not really convincing anyone.
yeah, and like Indiana, they responded to one of our motions, and they literally said in the brief, like, we are actively trying to stop the spread of gambling. And I'm just like, you spent $20 million on advertising last year. You did $1.2 billion in sales, and like you have the audacity to write that down in paper. So it's a very confusing area. And I honestly feel bad for the attorney generals that they have to like try to defend this, with plausible arguments.
Yeah, it's participating in a debate and getting assigned to the side that just is not right, that and
Yeah.
doing your best. Yeah, so okay, so to reiterate, if you win in the lower court in Indiana,
Yep.
you can immediately start operating in Indiana. If you win
Correct.
in the higher court, which is in the the Seventh Circuit is operates across multiple different states, and then you can start operating in those other states. If you were overturned in the higher court, you would have been operating in Indiana, but you would have to then stop.
Correct.
Uh,
But the good thing about it is
yeah,
that even if we operate in Indiana and then it's overturned later, like we will have gotten the public to feel what it's like to gamble and not lose money. And from my perspective, if we can get, 100,000 users to sign up, which I don't think is going to be very difficult. 70% of people in Indiana play the lottery once a week. I think this statistic is. So like getting 100,000 out of, I think it's
wow.
7 million or something, is not hard. But if we can get those people online to feel what it's like, there will be legislative change very quickly. So the biggest thing for us is winning in one district court or one appeals court, and just like letting people experience this, because it's a hard thing to explain to people that you're not going to lose money, because like we've thought of gambling for 3 millennia as just a losing proposition. So people have to, you can explain it to them and you can talk to them about it, but like it's one of those things that we just have a blinder on, and it's really something that they need to experience.
Yeah, and like as with Uber, it's
Yeah.
so convenient to just summon a car to take you to the airport, from an app, and have the payment and the route all handled. And then once you've been doing that for a while, uh, any sort of politician who says, "Hey, we're going to take that away," is that's a losing proposition politically.
Yeah.
Once a sufficient number of people depend on this, or just become used to it.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful that
Mhm.
I know we're living in a time of deep political divide, but this, at least from my perspective, seems like something that people on the left and the right should be able to get behind. We're saving poor people money, and we're limiting state power in some way. I know that all Republicans don't feel that way, but a certain percentage of them do, and I don't think too many people stand behind monopolies in general on either side. So, yeah, I think that politically, it's going to be, we're going to try to make it very difficult to defend this.
Well, it's I mean, I hope you succeed, and if listeners are listening to this in the future, because I know people go back to old episodes, maybe you already have. When, so let's talk a little bit more about the way the betting system works. I think I get the general idea that in the long run, if I played these games and put some money into them for my say I did it every day for the next 40 years, the the idea then is that at the end I end up with as much money as I would have had I invested in a savings account. Not exactly the same amount, but approximately Same amount, close, yeah. Uh, and and you also say that you can only bet what you can afford to lose. So how does that
Yeah,
work? How do you limit people to not have them bet too much all at once?
yeah. So it's really pretty simple, right? So we'll have a default setting that you can only bet. Let's say you can only bet $1 at a 1 in 1,000 dollar odds. We know that the average individual who gambles on a weekly basis in this country gambles just short of $1,000 a year, right? So we can assume that in a year span, if they gambled $1,000 in that year, that they would be returning that $1 into $1,000 within the year. And so that's kind of our general time for looking to return your money, the same amount of money within a 40-year span, because that's just too long. And if you want to gamble more than those odds, you either have to load more money on our platform, or you have to just we'll connect with your bank account or some other form of that shows that you have the money to gamble it, that you could return all of what you would lose in the interim back within a year. So at least from an initial standpoint, we're not going to replace like the Mega Millions or the Hoosier or the Powerball, because those numbers are just too large. I think what we're going to try to do to fill that need is move some of our advertising revenue to that, so that people will be able to get the thrill of trying to win $1 billion, but it just won't cost them anything. And that's still something we're working on and thinking about. So no guarantee that they'll be able to work, but yeah. So it's just looking at what assets someone has in the game or what assets they're willing to put at stake for the lottery, and then saying, okay, here's the normal time frame you have to play that, and we'll display all that information to individuals so that they can make informed choices, but also like just limiting how much they can bet, or either how much they can bet or what odds they're betting at, right? So if someone wants to set that they're betting 999 out of 1,000 odds, where every ticket except one returns $1, and then one ticket returns $2, they can bet as much as they want for that, because they're basically going to get the return. Yeah, it's just building out the security to stop them from betting when they're risking too much.
Okay, so yeah, so trying to focus on people betting within their means, having the fun of betting, and ending up net zero over the course of a year.
Yeah, I mean that's our initial framework, and we'll have to tweak that to just because we'll have good data on people's habits. So people are betting more or less. We can sort of individualize that later, but that is the framework for right now. And I think that that's at least a good hypothesis for a framework.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that that people spend $1,000 a year on lotteries. That number blows me away as someone who I don't think I have ever purchased a lottery ticket. I think I've received one at Christmas,
Me
maybe.
either.
I've scratched one at some point. I'm not sure how I got it, but yeah, that is such a large amount. That's $3 a day almost. But I guess if you just kind of every time you but spent a few dollars on lottery tickets every time you went to the store, or every time you were at a gas station, that's still a lot. And and so yeah, that.
Yeah, well, I
Mhm.
mean, uh, I think one of the like great American experiences is go to a gas station around noon to 12:30 in any part of America, and there will be at least a line forming to order lottery tickets. And it's the same people every day. I remember I was terrified at the people who were ordering the lottery tickets, because I would always screw up the numbers. They would always order real fast. You have to do, quick pick, 50-50, all these things. And I was always a little airheaded, so I wasn't great at it. But there were people who would come in and spend $150 every day. I don't know where they got the money from. It didn't look like they were people of means, and so I think it's disproportionate. We say it's $1,000 average, but there's a lot of people who spend. They're addicts, right? So um, that's what it is. So, but yeah, for anyone who like wants to see it, like I really recommend just like go hang out at a gas station from 12 to 12:30. I think it's that time at most states when they do the pick 3 and pick 4 that comes out in the daily drawing, and it's amazing. It's like one of these like untold stories of America that like this is something that happens every day.
So you're saying you used to be one of the people working at the gas station selling the lottery tickets when you were younger.
Yeah, my parents own gas station, so as I think I was like 12. I wasn't selling lottery tickets then, but I was working there. So yeah, so I did it for like 10 years of my life.
Was that an inspiration for this startup?
I don't know if it's an inspiration, but like I think that I have like it's certainly I don't think I would have understood the market if I didn't have that
Hmm.
experience. Certainly a lot of other things had to happen right in my life to get here, which I'm very fortunate for. But I don't know, like having that experience of seeing it on a day to day basis is certainly important.
Yeah, yeah, because I don't know. Not having had that experience, it's like, okay, yeah, the people who buy lottery tickets are disproportionately poor, and it's a bad investment, and they're losing money when they really can't afford to. But if I had to guess, I would think that they were losing pocket change,
Yeah,
not large quantities of money. And so, like, I wouldn't have thought, I wouldn't have in a million years thought that to innovate in this space, because honestly, my perception of just how large it is, and how much it affects a small number of addicts, was just
yeah,
totally miscalibrated. Um, so yeah.
yeah, and I think that that's like there's been a lot of talk after Trump got elected about the silent majority and all of this, and I think that like as a we consider lotteries a vice, we consider it this like moral problem, which certainly it is and it can be because you're as a secondary effect that you can't pay for your kids' food or you're losing your house or anything like this. And I think that like it's just one of those massive parts of our economy that people just kind of ignored, sort of because it's a perception, sort of because it's just the way it's always been. And that's a really great opportunity for me. And but realistically, if this wasn't a monopoly, this problem would have been like 1997. So as soon as like the age of Amazon or the internet, like this is not hard product development to do. And in a competitive market, there's no question that this would have been the natural outcome. But that's we just haven't had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, yeah. So in a competitive market, the house winnings are the profit margin, and any entrant, or even with just two competing entrants, they I can say, oh well, if you're at 11% how takings, I can do 10, and then you can do 9, and then I can do
Yep.
8, and in equilibrium we should be, just taking as much as we need to earn zero economic profit.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Which
there's some interesting. I think Walmart and a couple other places do some interesting sort of betting type things on. They're sort of the reverse of what we're doing, but instead of giving out interest for their people's checking accounts that they have through Walmart, what they do is they pile it together, and someone will win like $1,000 every once in a while, and it's been really important savings of individuals because I think it's gone up like 12 or 15%, the people who are using this, because the 1% or the half a percent or whatever they're getting in the checking account isn't interesting to people. But $1,000 that they could win keeps them engaged. So, yeah, I think that related somehow. But I think that's just like an interesting sort of an interesting way that like these type of it's sort of like gamifying things to make people do the right things. And obviously Walmart's incentive is that the more money people save and the more money people have, they can buy more stuff at Walmart. So it's one of those times when the incentive is fine.
Yeah, that's really cool, because I mean, that's a proven example that you can make incentives more salient. I'm kind of thinking about,
I love tangents.
in experimental econ, my field. this is sort of a tangent. You need to pay people enough for yeah, you need to pay people enough to make it meaningful for them. And sometimes we will do it where one person is going to get $100, and when they're playing a game or doing some task that we want to measure how they behave, what they're winning is points, and the points are probabilities towards the $100 winning, and that's a way to sort of keep it make things more salient. Where if they were playing for the difference between earning $1 and $1.50, they wouldn't be an effective incentive. But the difference between 1% chance of winning $100 and a 1.5% chance of winning $100 is
Yeah.
maybe more salient. Just because $100 is salient.
It's so fascinating to think like just reframing how distribution happens can change the activities that someone is willing to do. Obviously, you're much more in this field than I am, but it's it's always fascinating to think about what drives us from a motive is basically like what picture we're seeing, and that's you're talking about an example where you're just reframing the picture, but basically given the same thing. And at one point, someone's going to take an activity, and the other point they're not. And both of the activities would be good for the person. So yeah, I'm jealous of your studies.
Yeah. So I guess one thing is that the people who stand to gain the most from having this alternative from the lottery monopoly are the people who are very addicted to lotteries and games of chance. And it's just if your system has a ceiling on how much of your wealth you can bet, then one might expect that someone will bet the max amount from you, and then the rest from the state lottery or something that offers worse odds. But I guess that is still a win.
Yeah, and I think that I think you have to look at there's two options, right? So one, they could bet the max amount from us, or two, they could show that they have more wealth and they could bet more, right? So it's not like they can only bet this amount. They just have to either save more money or watch a couple advertisements to be able to bet more. So there's alternatives to being able to do that. The other thing is that and I had this misperception too, but most people I think in Michigan, I'm going to misquote the statistic, but it's somewhere around 40% of the games that are played are these quick pick threes and quick pick fours, and their maximum winnings are $600 or $500 and $5,000. So most people aren't going to have a problem with only winning $1,000 as a baseline because that's more than they're used to. So and that relates to what drives these people who are actually playing these games is a lower amount because they typically have a lower income. And so the threshold of what moves them is lower. So I'm not, we may lose some market share from that they want to go out and play the regular state lottery, and that's fine. Every consumer we get, we're helping. And so that just means that we need to educate them better, and just got to work to do that.
Yeah, so the misperception you referred to is the idea that most people are playing like Supermax or really big, trying to win millions, when in fact they are trying to win thousands,
at most tens of thousands.
Yeah, but at much better odds, or higher odds, I should say. That you can gamble on the millions.
We're just going to trick them into saving money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, as opposed to tricking them into losing money, which is clearly, I mean, we can debate whether tricking someone is always unethical, even if it's for their own good, but clearly tricking someone to their detriment is far worse.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to tell them what we're doing too, but
of course,
if they want to be tricked, we'll let them be tricked, right? But the information's there, and the same thing's true with the state lottery. The information's on there about the odds and everything. You get a card, it tells you, but who reads that? That's and who really thinks of that? Mm-hmm. That's sort of like the terms of service that are buried on all of our websites. It's so but from our perspective, we get a lot more value from. I mean, our incentives are to tell everyone that we're quote unquote tricking them into saving money because that's our marketing play. That we you can gamble and save. Like you can do this activity that humans have loved for millennia, but finally it's not going to hurt you.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good marketing pitch, and I think it'll appeal to even the people who, yeah, because on the surface it might seem like trying to sell gambling in terms of hey, this is gambling, but it's still financially wise. You might think, well, the people who are wiser about their finances are probably the ones who don't gamble. So there's sort of a challenge there with appealing to the right
Yeah,
people who are not the people who would just never be your customers anyway because they don't gamble.
yeah, and when we think about our company long term, like we are going to tell these people that like you're much better off putting this into a mutual fund. You're much better off putting this into a CD or any sort of interest bearing, activity. And like we really see our company as a financial services company first, and like we're just getting all of the unbanked and all the people who play lotteries onto modern finance. So like in that like we'll the same way uh I don't know who the mutual funds make money, like we'll make a little bit of money doing that, but like ultimately like we will win if we provide the best financial services to our customers.
Yeah, if only there were a way to gamify investing in mutual funds, but that's for some other future startup.
Well, I wanted to the first iteration of those ideas that we'd actually allow people to bet for different stocks, and you would basically like just have like a random distribution of stocks that people would get from being able to bet. The legal arguments for that were much more complicated, so I had to
Mm.
simplify it to this. But I think that it would be, if you had if you were managing which portfolio people were buying and sort of treated like a mutual fund, that if they continued to bet, they would essentially build a diversified mutual fund. I think that would be really interesting, and like that would be a great way to gamify it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's
Well, the legality of that is much more complicated.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and anything finance is going to be
Yes.
a thicket
Yep.
of regulations and laws. But you seem to have a strong case for challenging the lottery monopolies specifically, and one that is simple enough to understand.
Yeah, and that's we talked about IJ earlier, and that's what they do really well, right? It's lining up cases, making them simple, and you got to be able to relate to the problem and to the solution.
Well, we're running up on time here, Matthew. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything specific you want? A call to action for people listening, maybe.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to thank you for having me on. This is such an honor, and
Hmm.
it's really great questions, and really I hope I answered them somewhat well enough to please your guests or your listeners. But what we really need is people to be active and involved on social media. So on your preferred social media site, please like us or follow us. If we're going to try in the next couple of days to put together a campaign where people who are following us like send in videos about why they like Vice Lotteries. If anyone wants to do that, we'd love to do that. So we are at Vice Lotteries. We also have demo games that have just launched. So if you want to play and tell us how we can make the games better, because they're okay, but they got to get better, go to vicelotteries.com and sign up for an account. It's fake money, so feel free to put $1 billion in there and start playing the games and start. What we're trying to do is display what the difference in the outcomes would be between what we're trying to do and what state lotteries try to do. So any feedback that anyone has on that would really be terrific.
All right. Yeah, that so that's vicelotteries.com and at Vice Lotteries on various social media sites. I've already followed you on Twitter.
Yes.
So yeah.
We might be up to
So
45
you
now.
got one more. All right. So yeah, very new, but hopefully get that into the triple digits. So my guest today has been Matthew Curtis. Matthew, thanks for being part of Economics Detective Radio.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Hey listeners, just a quick update about the show. I know I haven't been releasing it at anything like a weekly frequency, and a lot of that has to do with the time it takes for me to do all the things related to the show. It's more than just interviews, it's scheduling, it's show notes, it's releasing to various platforms. There's a lot I do to keep the show running. Thankfully, thanks to my Patreon supporters, I've been able to outsource editing, which in the early days of the show was the most time-consuming element. And now, with someone else doing my editing, I have a lot more ability to release shows, but there are also more demands on my time now. So I'd really like to outsource more of those tasks so I can get back to a higher frequency of episodes released. So if you want to help me do that, you can head over to patreon.com and search for Economics Detective. Thanks, and I'll be back soon.